You are listening to A Scary State, and this week we're talking about New Mexico. So, Lauren.
See, Mackenzie.
How do you say scary?
I don't know. Do you know how to say let's get?
I think vamos.
That's let's go.
Scary.
Let's go scary. So, oh my gosh, this morning it was okay. I'm heading to work, right? It's like 5:45. I'm on the phone with mom. We're just chatting. And all of a sudden, I come up to a stoplight and this car in front of me also obviously stops. And I see like something in their back seat looking at me. And I'm like,
Oh, I hate when people have that shit.
and I was like, do they have like sunglasses on the back of their car, like their seat? Do they have like a weird mask? And I cannot see. It's just dark enough and my lights just don't reach high enough that I can see something staring at me. And I'm thinking like, is that a human? Like, what am I seeing? So I'm on the phone with mom and I'm like, this is so creepy. And the more I stared at it, the more unsettled I got.
Oh, sure.
And I just kept staring and I was like, I need to see what it is. And she goes, turn your high beams on. I said, no, I'm not going to do that because one, that's how people think that you're like going to kill them. And two,
What?
that's like a thing. If you flash your high beams at someone, it's like road rage and people don't like that.
It means get the fuck out of my way because you're going too slow in the left lane is what it means.
But they were in the right lane and they weren't going too slow. That's why I didn't want to do it because I didn't want to like, they were a fine driver. But I had to see. So I waited for a car to come up next to me and I quickly turned on my high beams. They had a freaking like skeleton mannequin thingy in the back staring out. Oh my gosh, it made me laugh. But in the moments when I didn't know what it was kind of terrifying.
I have seen that.
Very unsettling.
And have screamed walking past it. And it enrages me.
Yeah, it was kind of creepy, especially at like 5:45 in the morning when it's still dark outside and I'm driving and that's just in front of me.
I feel like, though, once shit starts to pass, like the 3 o'clock hour, going 4:30, it's no longer like a creepy time. It's just really fucking early.
It is really early, but it's dark.
I feel like most people are on their way home from whatever it is that they already did whatever it is they were going to do, and now they're on the way home because it's fucking early and they got to go to bed or go to work, like you.
Yeah.
So I just look at dark at 5 a.m. very differently than I look at dark at like 3 a.m.
No, yeah, but regardless, it's still the same dark.
I guess.
The sun hasn't started to rise yet, and it was creepy in the morning.
You're just weird on this one.
You would have been freaked out. Do not even
already
pretend.
admitted that I would be freaked out by
then.
it. I'm talking about nighttime, not the skeleton in the car.
It was like, it wasn't, I wouldn't consider it nighttime. It's like early daytime.
Day is already better than night. The term day automatically makes it not scary.
But I was telling one of my coworkers in the like little kitchen area today, and some random lady was heating up a bagel, and she looks at me, she goes, "That would be terrifying." Thank you.
What was it with you or with somebody else that there was this car parked?
It wasn't with me, but I know the car you're talking about.
It was parked there forever.
There's this car parked in Mackenzie's dad's old neighborhood.
Yeah.
On like the side of the road, and it never moved.
Months. And so I looked with somebody.
And then didn't it have a sign saying to look?
There was something in it that made me jump for sure.
Naturally.
I feel like I don't know if it was one of those skeleton thingies, but I feel like it was something like that, like meant to
freak you out.
I
wouldn't be able to be a cop with that either. Like, you know how cops will go up to like random cars on the side of the road and like have to look in?
Right.
No.
I jump scare too easily. Like I would be trying to sneak up on the intruder, and they'd like come around a corner and be like,
or you'd step on a stick and like it would crack and you'd freak out.
Or if someone else stepped on the stick.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'd be like, oh my God. They'd be like, it was me.
Yeah, you would not be very good.
No, I have already determined I would not be a good spy.
No.
Just like the moment I got thirsty, I would give away my position.
Uh-huh.
And I would not be good. I don't run towards danger. That's never my first thought.
No, see, if I'm the kind of person, if I hear gunshots, I'm going to go the other way.
Yeah.
I'm not going to run at it.
No.
Mm-mm. Okay, Bubba. Okay.
I don't remember what I was saying.
I don't know. It really interrupts things.
Well, the thought's gone, so we might as well just get into the statement. Because I have no idea what we were talking about.
great. So, bats don't fly into the night on a strict schedule usually. The bat flight at Carlsbad Caverns National Park in southeastern New Mexico occurs every evening around sunset from mid-April or May through late October, early November, after which the bats migrate to Mexico. I actually talk about Carlsbad Caverns today.
Nice.
Yeah. Watching large numbers of bats fly out of Carlsbad Cavern, the park's namesake cave, for dinner is an impressive spectacle. Even more awesome is the sight of the bats diving into the cavern from hundreds of miles in the air, returning home at 4 to 6 a.m., the early hours of people returning home.
Returning home. The crime's already done. You got nothing to worry about. They're tired.
The cave isn't open this early, but you can see the return of the bats from outside. If that sounds too tame, pack up your gear and apply for a permit to explore the park's many wild caves. No. This isn't for novices. Prior climbing experience is necessary, and rangers may inspect your gear to make sure it passes muster. They do that in different parts of the Appalachian. I think I talked about it for Maine, where there's like that 100-mile acre part, or like 100-acre wood. 100-acre woods. The 100-mile wood or 100-day wood, whatever it was. And if they don't think you're equipped to go in, they won't let you in.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
I feel cool because I'd be like, I went in a cave once, and I just leave out the rest of the part of like being absolutely terrified, really only having one memory from it, and that was the very, very end.
People came to the area that's now New Mexico more than 12,000 years ago. Experts think they migrated from what's now Russia across a land bridge called the Bering Strait during the last ice age. When the ice age ended, water levels rose, covering this bridge. Thousands of years later, Native American tribes, including the Apache, Zuni, Navajo, and Pueblos, lived on the land.
We talk about the Navajos.
Oh, yeah. New Mexico is the country's top producer of perlite, a type of glass used in insulation and gardening.
I feel like I was thinking, I don't know if it's the same, but I was thinking like fiberglass.
Oh, yeah.
Like I don't know if that's what it is, but that's what my mind went to.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Did your parents ever tell you like to not touch
it? Yeah, because little bits would get on your in your skin.
That's not how my parents described it. I'm sure that's what they meant when they said get stuck. But my mind was picturing myself Velcroed to this fucking wall if, God forbid, I touched it. Fucking terrified.
That is so funny.
I took things so literally. It was a long time before I realized that, like, people don't stick to it.
No, things stick to you.
Right, things stick to you. And it's like the whole light in the back seat thing. I feared it in my life.
I did too. People would turn it on. I'm like, can you please stop? Like, we're going to die. Can you turn it off?
I've never actually died, but...
On July 16th, 1945, the very first atomic bomb was detonated in the desert sands of the Jornada del Muerto in south-central New Mexico. Known by its codename Trinity, it was of the same design as the bomb dropped on
Nagasaki,
Japan a few weeks later. Mackenzie got me all nervous I was saying it wrong. The Trinity site is located on the White Sands Missile Range and is now a National Historic Site. When President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Wilderness Act, few were aware that America's landmark conservation legislation originated in New Mexico. Ecologist and Forest Service Ranger Aldo Leopold achieved the first official wilderness area in the nation by gaining designation from the Gila Wilderness in New Mexico. With under 20 people per square mile and around 13,500 ranches covering over 60% of the state, there's way more livestock in New Mexico than people. That's wild.
Well,
every October, over 500 hot air balloons and tens of thousands of balloon aficionados gather for the Albuquerque International Balloon Fiesta, which began in 1972 and has grown every year since. One reason pilots love to fly Albuquerque is because of the box. The box allows balloons to fly north at low elevations and then cruise back south at higher elevations. I am afraid of heights, but I would go into a hot air balloon.
I think of all the things that one can do that requires them to conquer their fear of heights. That is the one thing that I'd be willing to work on it for.
Okay.
Nothing else is that bad for me to want to.
I mean, I think it would be really pretty to like look out at everything, not to look down, but to like look out.
Oh, I couldn't look down.
Right, exactly.
I would have to look out.
Exactly. Like, that's the way you can get over the fear.
I had to really be careful when I was on a plane recently because I did look down. So I'm like, oh my God, has it always been that far away?
Just, one day you're in there, you're like, I don't like this.
I think subconsciously my brain always knew that it was going to be afraid of heights because of the things that I would do when I was little. Okay.
Well,
Lauren.
that's New Mexico.
What's scary tea you pouring, Lauren?
So Rattlesnake Canyon in New Mexico is located in the Carlsbad Caverns National Park, which you talked about. but I thought it was in California because there is a California, like a Carlsbad, California.
Yes.
But it's located in the southern part of the state, and it's pretty much right on the Texas border.
Okay.
So it's over 33,000 acres of hilly and barren wilderness, with Rattlesnake Canyon being the most isolated part of the park. And it's surrounded by really high canyon walls.
Okay.
According to alltrails.com, as of September 2022, Rattlesnake Canyon is closed indefinitely.
Oh, wow.
But when it was open, Lower Rattlesnake Canyon offered a moderate hike on the beautiful Desert Loop Road. It was a one-way travel time of about 3 hours, with a distance of 3 miles, 4.8 kilometers, and a 600-foot or 183-meter elevation change.
One way?
Yeah, one way is 3 hours, like 3 miles, 3 hours.
So it wasn't saying like you could only go one way. Okay.
No, like one way and then you turn around.
Got it.
Overnights were allowed by permit, so also like you said.
Yeah.
Okay, so now this is where I took it a little off-road for a second.
Ooh, I like what you did there.
So we know I love snakes. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist giving just a little small section about rattlesnakes, being that we're in Rattlesnake Canyon.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you.
Do your thing include like a Nikki Snake thing?
No.
Okay, so then we're good. I can do some facts.
Perfect. Okay, so there are 30 different species of rattlesnakes that are indigenous to the U.S. They can range in size from 1.5 to 8.5 feet. 0.4 to 2.6 meters, and weigh between 2 to 15 pounds, so about 0.9 to 6.8 kilograms. They also can live between 10 to 25 years. In the U.S., most rattlesnakes breed in June through August. And what's cool, rattlesnakes are ovoviviparous, which means that the eggs are carried inside of the mother, but the young are born live. Isn't that cool?
Mm-hmm.
It's cool. Okay, and obviously rattlesnakes are venomous.
Mm-hmm.
Thousands of people are bitten in the U.S. every year, but as long as proper medical care is received, the bites are usually not fatal. But overall, about 100 rattlesnake bites are reported annually in New Mexico alone. And in New Mexico, there are at least 7 different types of rattlesnakes. So the western diamondback is the most common. Then there's the New Mexico ridge-nosed, the Mojave, the mottle rock, the northern black-tailed, the prairie, and the desert Masazaga. Okay, that's all the snake facts. I could have really gone further, but I was like, no, this isn't about rattlesnakes. This is about my story. But with my story, just a little blanket trigger warning, it includes mentions of suicide.
Okay. But not snakes.
No snakes. I just say rattlesnake a lot because that's where they are, but there's no snakes.
That's okay.
Unfortunately. David Coughlin and Raffi Kodikian met in 1994 when they were both in college and became best friends. David had been attending the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, and Raffi was studying journalism at Northeastern University in Boston.
That's where my mom went.
Northeastern?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's cool. When did she go there?
Late 70s into the early 80s.
Oh, she's that old?
You better hope she doesn't listen to this episode.
No, I guess that makes sense because college is 18 years old. Because my parents were born in 64.
Yeah, my mom was in 60.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she graduated.
So then that really isn't as old. I don't know why. I would have thought like, oh yeah, she probably went in the 90s.
No.
Yeah. No, because that's when we were born.
Yes.
Wow, things aren't really mixing how they're supposed to today.
It's okay. It happens.
Okay, so by their 20s, both these guys live in Boston. David Coughlin had grown up in Wellesley, a suburb of Boston, which is probably not how you pronounce it because it's Massachusetts.
It's okay.
After college, he was working at Wellesley's town hall dealing with mundane traffic issues as a traffic policy analyst.
Oh.
Raffi Kodikian had grown up in Buckington Township near Philadelphia. While in college, he worked as an editorial assistant with the Boston Globe, but he always dreamed of being a freelance travel writer.
That's cool.
He knew it didn't pay well, but the adventure is what drew him towards wanting that.
Sure.
And at the time, out of college, Raffi was working at an entry-level job at the Boston Mutual Fund Company writing customer care letters.
Okay.
Sounds boring.
Does.
David wanted more as well and planned to attend grad school at the University of California at Santa Barbara, studying environmental science. So in July of 1999, the pair decided to take a road trip from Boston to California. I know. And on their trip, you would love this. They would stop at national parks and other campsites to camp along the way and would occasionally stop at cheap motels. It really sounds like your dream trip.
It's because they're men. They can do whatever they want.
Right. So Raffi jumped on the opportunity, quitting his entry-level job, and eagerly joined his friend on their cross-country adventure.
Because I would love the cross-country adventures.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't have to camp every night.
Yeah. No.
That wouldn't be fun.
No. Raffi was simply along for the ride, something he yearned to do. The two constantly talked about this trip being the trip of a lifetime. So the two set out for the road trip on Friday, July 30th, 1999. On August 4th, the two arrived in Rattlesnake Canyon and Carlsbad Caverns National Park. So they actually made like pretty good time.
Wait, what day did they leave?
They left on July 30th and they got there on August 4th.
4 days? I mean, that makes sense.
4 or 5 days. Yeah.
I think it takes about 6 to get from one side to the other.
It just seems really fast.
They definitely didn't stop to look at the scenery.
No, yeah.
They just booked it.
I would have wanted to stop to look at the scenery. That's part of the whole road trip thing.
Why are we going on the road if we're not going to stop?
Right.
So
that's how Mom and I are. That is not how Dad and Jared are. So they just want to point A to point B. Mom and I are like, oh, look at that cute little shop over there. Okay, oh, let's go over here.
Hold on. Because on a trip like you're describing, where you are getting to a final destination that's really not that far away, no, we're not fucking stopping. We're just getting there.
Well, like when we went down to the beach, it was like 7.5 hours.
It's a straight shot trip. You have one stop to fill up gas.
There was a nice little restaurant we stopped at. It was so good. And then there was this other little place. We just have a grand time.
Going from Boston to California, that's like a planned, okay, we're going across the country. We're going to have to stop anyway. Let's like make the most of it. A 7-hour trip down to the beach? No, the purpose is to drive to get to the beach. That's the vacation.
Yeah, but you have to have fun along the way. No. Stop and smell the roses, Mackenzie.
No, I want to get to the roses at the beach. I want to smell those roses. I want to smell some roses at some random truck stop in North Carolina.
It wasn't a random truck stop. It was a beautiful little restaurant. It wasn't beautiful. It was actually kind of scary. We didn't know if we should actually go in, but we did, and it was so good. So upon arriving at Carlsbad National Park...
It's also because you have to pee all the time, so you're going to stop anyway.
Oh, yeah. It's fine for me. Okay, so they arrive. They stopped at the ranger station to ask where they could camp for the night. The ranger told them Rattlesnake Canyon, which was down a gravel road leading into the backcountry. He helped them fill out a one-night camping permit. So as they were set to make their way to their camp spot, the ranger asked the men how much water they had. He said that each man should have at least 1 gallon of water, so 3.8 liters per person per day.
Okay.
So if they're staying for 2 days, they need 4 gallons.
Okay.
Due to the heat in the canyon.
Yeah.
So they ensured they did, and they left the station. Raffi was a pretty experienced camper, and as they were leaving, he told David that the amount of water that the ranger mentioned was overkill. They didn't need that much. They would be fine with their 3 pints of water and 1 pint of Gatorade. So this was 6 times less water than what the ranger had suggested.
I was going to say.
Yeah. So they got their stuff situated and headed down the gravel road. They reached a spot where they parked the car, they loaded up the stuff they would need, and hiked 700 feet or 213 meters to the canyon trails. From there, they hiked 1.5 miles or 2.4 kilometers before they found a spot where they wanted to set up camp.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Why? They're like trying to get to California, right?
Yeah, but they're stopping here overnight to like camp overnight.
How far away are they walking from their car?
Only 1.5 miles.
Oh, okay.
I guess to be like kind of away from like the parking lot, the like gravel road. So they wanted to be like a little bit more into the canyon.
Okay.
So they gathered brush before nightfall, set up their tents, and settled into their camping spot in the Chihuahuan Desert.
Nice.
That night, they used one of their 3 pints of water they had packed to boil hot dogs for dinner. The next morning rolls around, and the two slowly wake up and start to pack up their stuff so they can continue on with their trip. At this point, it's only about 8 a.m., but it was already getting really hot in the canyon. Like, they're already starting to sweat at 8 a.m.
Been there.
Gross. Oh, yeah. The two were also starting to run low on their waters, but they knew they were really close to the car, so soon enough, they'd be back in the car, continuing on their way to California. They started making their way back to the car. They saw the rocks that marked the trail out and kept seeing things that they remembered seeing on their way to the campsite the day before. After walking for about an hour, the two stopped. They knew they were heading in the direction of the car, but they thought they should be at the parking lot by now. But they knew they had to be close, so they kept walking. After another 2 to 3 hours of walking in the direction they thought the car was in, they still weren't arriving. This is when they really started to look around. They noticed that there were no more cairns marking the trail. So a cairn is a mound of stones usually used as a landmark. So in this case, this is what the desert used to mark the trail, so hikers knew where to go. They saw no stacks and nothing to indicate to them that they were still on the trail.
Oh, God.
So at this point, they pulled out the topographical map they had with them. So they were determined to find something, a landmark, something to ground them in place where they were.
Sure.
But all of the squiggles on the map meant nothing to them because neither of them knew how to read a topographical map.
I was going to say, I feel like of all maps to have,
that's probably the most confusing.
Exactly.
Yes. So at this point, it's about noon, and the sun is at its highest point in the sky, beaming down on David and Raffi. They were hot and tired, so they walked to the edge of one of the canyon walls, and had some shrubs providing shade, and they sat down there to regroup. They didn't have the right supplies, and they were now out of water. Thankfully, it started to rain, so David and Raffi drank from the water that had gathered in pools, on rocks, on leaves. They refilled their water bottles, and now, a bit more hydrated, they continued walking on. They walked into the night, mentally and physically preparing themselves to spend a second night in the canyon.
Mm.
After they set up their tents again, they tried to come up with a plan for how to get back to their car, which they knew was parked on the eastern rim of the canyon. As they were thinking, Raffi thought he saw a light on the western rim. Immediately, he pointed out to David, who also saw this light. So the two knew that this had to be a road over the rim, and in the morning, that's the direction they would go. So David and Raffi went to sleep for the night, filled with hope that they would finally be out of the canyon in the morning. When they woke up, they headed towards where Raffi thought he saw the lights. Something to go over real quick. So we're in our third day in this desert canyon.
Mm-hmm.
2 or so days with no food, no water.
Mm-hmm.
The temperatures in the canyon in August are in the 90s, 30s in Celsius. Record temperatures have even reached 104 Fahrenheit, which is
Damn.
40 Celsius. And it's hot, they're out of water, so things are not looking very good.
Yeah.
So that morning, they planned to walk in 90-degree weather across the canyon and up the far western rim, hoping that Raffi did see lights and there would be a road there. So this time, they didn't even pack their campsite. The plan was to just go. They wanted to get over the rim, get out of here.
Yeah.
They knew that park rangers would be looking for them eventually, as they had filled out a 1-day camping permit and it was well past 1 day.
Yeah.
So using a journal that they had brought with them to document the trip, Raffi drew a crude map of where they were heading in case the rangers did come looking for them. They included their names, ages, they're about 26 at this time,
Mm-hmm.
where they're from, their contact info, their family's contact information.
Smart.
Yeah, very smart. They included what was happening to them, how they were out of food and water, and briefly what they had been going through. They left the journal, their tents, and their stuff behind and set off for the road. They walked for hours in the heat until they reached a huge ridge. So like I said, they're huge canyon walls.
Mm-hmm.
So they knew that the road would be kind of beyond that. So they
Mhm.
had to climb, sort of.
Yeah.
So with the little strength they had, because they haven't eaten, they haven't had anything to drink, the two worked their way up this ridge. Eventually, after really struggling and pushing, they made it over the rim.
Oh, God.
But their hopes were completely crushed when they came over that rim, looked out, and saw nothing but more cactus and more expansive desert.
No.
They had no idea what lights they had seen the night before. It could have just been a figment of their imaginations, something they wanted to see, so their brain tricked them
Yeah.
into seeing it. Completely devastated, the two talked about what to do next. David wanted to just head back to their campsite, but Raffi wanted to continue on, insisting that the road had to be just a bit further. So they continued walking on in search of the road. As they were slowly
What would you have done?
I probably would have headed back to the camp.
Same.
Continuing walking is what would have put us in this situation, so we're just going
Right.
back to the camp.
Exactly.
And after if I knew that I was 1.5 miles from my car,
Right.
I can get back to my car in, let's say, an hour.
Yeah.
If I'm walking for 3 hours, I'm not in the right place.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking too. I'm like, they didn't go that far.
Right.
And so clearly you walked past it. You should backtrack, not keep going.
Yes, exactly. Because Jared and I were starting to get to that point on our trail where we were like,
Yeah, that was too long of a time to
we
wait.
should turn around at some point. But we were the same way. It has to be, the parking lot has to be closed.
Lesson learned.
And then we saw the Blackburn trail station. So as they were slowly walking, they noticed that a buzzard had started circling overhead.
Oh, God.
After hours of walking and not getting anywhere, they decided their only option was to finally head back to camp. Along the way, they started to pick and drink the juice from the prickly pear cactus's fruit. When they arrived back at camp, they were even more crushed to find no rangers waiting for them and no signs at all that anyone had been at their camp. Everything was exactly how they had left it.
Mm.
At this point, their spirits were completely broken and they had to resort to more extreme measures. They decided to drink their own urine. Raffi abandoned the idea quickly after he gagged while attempting to.
Yeah.
They also say you're not supposed to do that anymore.
Right.
Yeah, it's not. It's like what your body is getting rid of. You should not
Right.
put it back.
Put it back in.
It was later that night that David started to vomit and that his legs started to seize up. They knew that at this point there was nothing else they could do but wait for help.
Mm.
So the two started to gather rocks to make a huge SOS sign, but after getting only the first S and part of the O done, they didn't have the energy to do anymore.
Oh, my God.
Raffi then thought that maybe he could burn a sleeping bag and that the smoke from that could create a smoke signal.
Okay.
So he doused it in the fuel they had, lit it on fire, but the smoke didn't go high enough.
Mm.
So now he has no sleeping bag and there's an intense chemical smell in the area.
Lovely.
Things had gotten dire at this point and the two knew it. So on that third day, August 7th, convinced they were going to die, David and Raffi made a suicide pact. David was in pain and in clear agony and started begging Raffi to just kill him, to spare him the agony of dying of thirst. Raffi kept trying to calm him down and reassure him. The boys had that journal with them that they were documenting the trip with. On Saturday night, knowing he was near the end, David had written in their journal, quote, "I love you, Mom, Dad, Mike, Kath, Ike, Bath, all kids, Sonnet, Keith, Joe. I'm so tired." He also wrote to his girlfriend saying, quote, "I am in utter agony and I know you would understand. I love you so much. I have barely eaten and drank since Wednesday evening. Nobody is coming to help. You will always be in my heart and you will now always have an angel standing by." This is when the two tried slitting each other's wrists, but their hunting knives were too dull.
Ugh.
David told Raffi, "You'll have to kill me, then you'll have to kill yourself." On August 8th, 4 days after arriving in the canyon, Raffi wrote in that journal, quote, "I killed and buried my best friend today." Dave had been in pain all night. At around 5 or 6, he turned to me and begged that I put my knife through his chest. I did, and a second time when he wouldn't die. He still breathed and spoke, so I told him I was going to cover his face. He said okay. He struggled but died. I buried him with love. God and his family and mine, please forgive me. At 1:30 p.m. that day, Lance Matson, a park ranger, was standing in... Oh, I forgot to say, this is a really sad story. I meant to give that intro at the beginning, and then I got too focused on rattlesnake facts. So it's a very sad story. So at 1:30...
Gathered.
Yep. At 1:30 p.m. that day, Lance Matson, a park ranger, was standing in the mostly empty parking lot at Rattlesnake Canyon, looking at a dusty red Mazda, the only car in the lot. Matson knew the two guys who owned the car, as they had requested their one-night parking permit from him just a few days prior before heading into the canyon. Matson was slightly annoyed as the two guys had only gotten a one-day permit, yet here they were, still camping 3 days later. But it happens, so Matson knew the protocol. He would find the campers and either help them pack up and head out or help them fill out forms to extend their camping permit. So Matson and a park ranger volunteer headed down the gravel trail that led into the canyon. After walking less than a mile down the trail, the pair spotted a green and maroon tent just off the trail,
Oh my God.
pretty visible. The closer
We're so close.
So close.
Oh.
The closer Matson and his partner got to the tent, the more the hair on the back of their neck started to stand up. As they approached, they started to smell a strong chemical burning scent, and littered all over the ground were bits of burned pieces of trash. The two slowly made their way to the closed tent and noticed movement inside, but there was no sound. Matson slowly and shakily reached for the tent zipper and unzipped it. Inside the tent, he found Raffi, laying in the tattered tent, wearing only shorts, obviously badly dehydrated, and looking like he was right on death's doorstep. The first thing that Raffi said when he saw Matson was, "Please tell me you have water." Matson did and handed him a canteen. Seeing only Raffi and knowing that David should be with him, Matson asked where his friend was, to which Raffi pointed to a pile of rocks and said, "Over there. I killed him." Authorities immediately came to the area and Raffi was airlifted to a hospital to be treated. When he was found, he wasn't close to death, like he had seemed earlier. He was able to walk and was fully coherent. His pulse was fast, but only slightly, and his blood pressure was normal. Raffi was treated at the hospital for only about an hour before being released and deemed healthy enough to go to jail to now await a murder investigation and trial.
What? Whoa. Back up. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Wait. When they found him,
He looked like he was close to death.
Uh-huh.
He was taken to the hospital to be treated.
Uh-huh.
He only needed to be treated for an hour because he was in much better shape than he had seemed when he was picked up.
Okay.
So the whole case goes to trial first to see what evidence they have before they head to the sentencing portion of the trial. So I'm just going to go over everything that took place during these two trials. I'm not going to separate them because
he has
was
a
too
full-blown
confusing.
confession.
Right. So first off, an autopsy was performed on David Coughlin. The results revealed that he was indeed dehydrated, but that it didn't appear to be fatal. So technically meaning that he would have lived had Raffi not murdered him. The next bit will be what was discussed in the trial and the sentencing trial. And like I said, I just kind of threw it all together for the sake of clarity.
Mm-hmm.
So, Raffi's story. So over the next few days, in a Carlsbad courtroom, Raffi recounted the harrowing tale of what he and David went through and all that transpired up to and on that fateful morning of August 8th.
So the story that you just said is from him?
Yes.
Okay.
So with his head buried in his hands, as tears rolled down his face, Raffi went on to describe in detail all that had happened about them getting lost, concluding with him describing how he had killed his best friend. He testified, saying that David had begged him to kill him. He recounted the details with tears in his eyes as he testified that David had told him to get the knife. He said that after the stabbing, he asked David if he was still in pain, and with a smile coming across his face, David said no, that he felt much better. Raffi said that he held David's hand until he died. The journal that the two had kept became a central piece of this trial. All of the entries were read and pored over extensively. Entries were found that described more of what the two were experiencing towards the end. Raffi wrote, quote, "Camped Wednesday, started back Thursday morning, but couldn't find the entrance to the trail leading to the car. We've got minimal water and have been eating cactus fruit. We need help." The journal talked about the suicide pact that the two had made, with Raffi writing things like, quote, "We will not let the buzzard get us alive. God forgive us." Followed by, quote, "Dave has asked that his remains be cremated and thrown over the edge of the Grand Canyon. I leave the handling of my remains to my family." Yeah, the story was his story of what happened. Let's go over the defense first and what Raffi's attorneys and team were pushing. So Gary Mitchell, Raffi's attorney, started off by trying to describe the killing as an act of kindness, a way to put his friend out of the agony that he was experiencing and as part of the death pact that the two had made, which was made evident by the journal entries.
Was two different handwritings?
It didn't go into the handwriting. It didn't really touch on that.
How do you know it's two different people writing the story then?
Hmm?
Like writing entries in the journal. You don't know it's two different people.
I mean, you don't.
One of them's dead.
Right. But I mean, they never touched on it. So I guess, you know, people were like, oh, I verified the hand. I don't know. They never touched on handwriting at all. In all of the articles I read, all of the things I read, that wasn't.
They're literally using a journal. That would have been my first thought.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Nope. Was never brought up.
interesting. Okay.
So Raffi was going to kill himself after he killed David, but he had been too weak to kill himself after he had killed David. So the defense tried to paint the scene by saying that these two close friends found themselves in a situation that put them under emotional and physical distress. They criticized the National Park Service, saying that the quality of the map was partly to blame. They added that the boys' inability to understand survival in the desert dropped them in a very extreme case of circumstance. The lawyers tried to show that under those same sets of circumstances, anyone would have done what Raffi did. His team tried to argue, saying that the two boys had been placed in a horrible situation of total hopelessness, and Raffi did what he thought was right in the moment. They even had medical experts testify at this point, so these experts testified about heat-related panic. So this type of panic has been documented for hundreds of years, and it's very possible that under the conditions the boys were suffering, it would have easily put them in a mental state where they would not make very rational decisions.
Isn't there like that statistic that when it's hot, crime goes up?
I think you're right.
Like heat waves or whatever?
Yeah, I think you're right. So Les Williams was working as the prosecutor in the case. So now we're on the prosecution side.
Okay.
He was working with Eddy County Sheriff Mark A. Click. From the beginning, they said that Raffi's story and recount of the events were full of holes. So we'll go over what these holes were.
Okay.
So first off, he brought up the part of Raffi's story where Raffi said that he had climbed onto the ridge of the western rim where he believed to have seen the lights to try to find the trail or the road.
Mm-hmm.
Raffi said he was met with the sight of more desert extending on seemingly for miles. Well, apparently, park roads are clearly visible from the top of all of the ridges that had surrounded the area where the two were camping.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to that, and to being lost, apparently there were two trail markers within view of their camp, no further than 80 feet, 24 meters apart. Park officials even testified and said that David and Raffi were only a half-hour walk from the car.
Right.
So they were always just out of sight of it. Because the camp guy, like the ranger, was able to get to them within like a half mile of a walk.
Right.
And yeah, if we're thinking that it takes you about an hour to walk a mile in this area, half hour, half a mile.
Sure.
And that if they had hiked up one of the many hills like Raffi said they did, they would have seen the gravel trail they drove in on. Park officials also went on to say that the pair were, quote, woefully equipped for desert camping, almost too poorly equipped. That they had come into the desert with only 3 pints of water and one pint of Gatorade, though Raffi claimed to be an experienced camper. Then the prosecutors focused on this so-called suicide pact that the two had allegedly made. Raffi had stated that they had used a pocket knife to try to slit each other's wrists, but that the knife hadn't been sharp enough to pierce the skin. Well, that knife was shown during the trial, and it was plenty sharp enough.
Was it the same one used to stab him in the chest?
Mm-hmm.
How the fuck is it sharp enough to stab you in the chest?
Right. And so how he said he described it was David had pulled up his shirt to show his ribs, and that's where he told Raffi to do it. And so the first, he said it took a lot of effort to, get it to pierce the skin.
Mm-hmm.
And then he did it a couple more times. But so I guess they weren't able to do that on their wrists. But the prosecution is saying that the knife was sharp.
Highly suspect.
So Williams said that the fact that Raffi didn't kill himself using the knife meant that he had hope to survive. So he wasn't hopeless like the journals would lead some to believe.
Yeah.
And when Raffi and his team mentioned that he was too weak to kill himself after killing David, the prosecution went against that as well. Sheriff Click stated that Raffi was, quote, moderately to severely dehydrated, but wasn't close to dying when he was found by Matson.
Mm-hmm.
They even went on to say that he couldn't have been too weak to kill himself as he had buried David's body under rocks.
Oh, true.
Some of which weighed more than 70 pounds. So the weight of the rocks and the ability to even complete such a grueling task seemed remarkable for someone seriously dehydrated on the verge of death like Raffi claimed he was. To this, Click said, quote, it's not logical. They're doomed. No water. They're weak. They're going to die. Yet here he has the strength to go around picking up 60 and 70 and 80-pound rocks. Authorities even showed the video of them uncovering David after Raffi had been airlifted to the hospital. He was soaked in blood from his chest wounds. Raffi explained that he had buried him to keep him from being eaten by buzzards. Raffi was coherent when he was found and didn't seem to be in a delusional state at all.
Yeah.
Of course, this brought Raffi's medical condition into question. So he had been released from the hospital after 1 hour.
Yeah.
Pretty quick after allegedly being in the desert without food and water for a few days.
Right.
Because the body can only go, 3 days without water?
Yeah.
Yeah. And though some doctors disagree, experts said that Raffi's condition did not present someone who had been without food and water for 4 days in the desert.
Oh.
After going to...
But some disagree.
Some disagree.
Interesting.
The doctors seem to disagree, but the experts, which I don't know the difference between them, say that, he looked like he had food and water in those 4 days. Though he's trying to claim that he didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Before going too much further, one theory the prosecution tried to put forward was that David had had a thing with one of Raffi's ex-girlfriends.
Oh, Lord.
Sheriff Click sent Captain Eddie Carrasco to Boston to see if that was the motive for the killing or if there was anything else he could find that could serve as a motive, as they didn't have one. The captain came back and reported, quote, "No one I talked with ever heard a crossword between them. They were the best of friends." So Les Williams, the prosecutor, said during the trial, quote, "Where there is life, there is hope. Do we want to live in a society where people can kill other people just because they imagine they're in a desperate situation?"
As soon as you said the thing about, like, why would he have the energy to move all those rocks but not enough energy to kill himself, I immediately started thinking differently of, like, maybe he didn't do it, of, like, maybe he did that because he thought he was going to die, so might as well use that as his last bit of effort to, you know?
Yeah. Because he said, like, after he did the rocks, he, like, lay down in his tent and just kind of waited for death.
Right.
So continuing on with this quote, I think the answer is obviously no. The defendant purposely took David Coughlin's life. David Coughlin would be alive today if Raffi Kodikian had not killed him. The law says you may not murder another person just because you think it's in their best interest. So Williams asked Raffi if he knew what he had been doing at the time, to which Raffi said, "What I thought I was doing was keeping my friend from going through 12 to 24 hours of hell before he died." So it was later revealed and became clear that David's vomiting wasn't an indication of severe dehydration as the pair had thought, leading to why Raffi was going to kill David in the first place. Rather, it was more likely a reaction to the unripe cactus fruit that they had been eating on their way back to their tent.
Okay.
So, of course, I looked into this.
Yeah.
So there are actually many poisonous cacti fruit out there. The prickly pear cactus is what the two ate. If prepared correctly, it will produce a safe and tasty fruit. But some, if not prepared correctly, contain toxins, which can cause adverse reactions in humans.
Okay.
So the bitter prickly pear is one of those poisonous ones.
Yeah.
This fruit contains toxins that can cause nausea, vomiting, and stomach cramps.
Okay.
And in severe cases can lead to paralysis and death.
Oh, wow.
But I can see
Didn't
why
his legs, or like he said,
he said they started to seize up.
Yeah.
So I can see why they thought it could have been dehydration as well, because dehydration can lead to disorientation and dehydration headaches. So some of the symptoms of those headaches are nausea and vomiting.
Sure.
The defendant is not an evil person, Williams said. He is not a bad person, but he did do a bad thing. With that, Williams was seeking a first-degree murder conviction for Raffi, which would mean a mandatory life sentence. But Raffi could be acquitted due to mental reasons. Second-degree murder could be punishable up to 15 years, and a manslaughter conviction could be punishable up to 6 years. So New Mexico law doesn't allow mercy killings or assisted suicides. So that's kind of where they were trying to go with it. Like, the defense was like, he did it because, like, his friend was dying. He's going to help him along with it. Well, New Mexico doesn't allow that.
Okay.
So on May 9th, the legal team representing Raffi told him to plead temporary insanity due to dehydration, saying he was mentally disoriented from extreme heat and thirst when he killed David. But Raffi didn't want to do that and instead agreed to plead no contest to the charges of murder.
Wow.
By doing this, he would avoid a jury trial and instead be putting his fate in the hands of a judge instead.
I mean,
Raffi did it.
It's easier to maybe convince one person than 12.
Right. And like one podcast I listened to, they were like, I never want a jury trial. Do you know how stupid people are?
Yes.
And I was like, valid.
Valid. Very valid.
So Raffi did end up pleading no contest, like he said he would, to the second-degree murder of his best friend David Coughlin and was sentenced on May 10th. A possible maximum penalty of 20 years in prison, but instead, District Judge Jay Forbes sentenced him to 15 years with all but 2 suspended. So this means that he had to serve 2 years and had 13 hanging over his head. So if he were to get in trouble again, he would then be serving those 13.
Okay.
His 2 years would be followed by 5 years of probation. When the sentence was read, Gary Mitchell, Raffi's lawyer, softly cried but described the sentence was fair. Forbes said, quote, Raffi Kodikian's conduct in this situation caused the life of David Coughlin to end. Mr. Coughlin was a particularly vulnerable victim, and the impact on his family is never and will never be forgotten by them. Forbes defended his sentence of Raffi, saying that Raffi poses no threat to society and is remorseful, though he still believes he did the right thing. Quote, he had the conscious and rational understanding of what he did at the time he murdered David Coughlin, Forbes said. Raffi's remorse is genuine. I don't question that. David's family was not in the room when the sentence was read, but they did prepare a statement that was provided to prosecutor Les Williams.
I was just about to ask, what did his family say?
So their statement said, quote, we can think of no reason why Raffi would have wished David any harm or pain. Moreover, we cannot presume to know what transpired or the thoughts and emotions the two experienced during the days before David's death. To be sure, we have questions. However, we find it difficult to believe that there was any malicious intent.
Okay.
Raffi Kodikian ended up serving 16 months and was released in November of 2001. Outdoors.com ended their article in a great way by saying, quote, by not having a trial, we may never know what happened those 4 days in the searing heat of the New Mexico desert. Only 2 people know the complete and true story, and one of them has taken it to his grave, and the other will have to live with the events of those 4 days for the rest of his life. So there you have it, the sad and suspicious death of David Coughlin by his best friend Raffi Kodikian in Rattlesnake Canyon.
You know, I was on both for a second there. And then as you kept going, I went back and forth.
I did too. I don't know what I believe happened.
I feel like in a situation like this, when both sound pretty plausible,
Mm-hmm.
you have to bring in the character of the person.
Right. And
know?
I mean, he seemed like both of them were just really great guys.
Yeah.
And I saw pictures of them too, because I watched a Mr. Baldwin about this as well. And they just seemed like great people.
Yeah.
You know, like good friends. They were, best friends for a while, but then it's like, we're only hearing one side of the story.
But I also think too, like when you were talking about how they checked back in Massachusetts, like how their relationship really was.
Mm-hmm.
And they're thinking there's like a girl.
Right.
I'm like, they have just traveled together for how long?
Right.
And it's for one to go to school and the other one decided to just hop along for the ride.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like you're so close.
Yeah.
Why now would he decide? It's not like they were competing for the same job.
Right. And I mean, Rattlesnake Canyon is the most isolated part of Carlsbad National Park. But the only reason they slept there was because the ranger was like, oh, that's where you can camp. It's not like he knew, oh, here's an isolated place. Like, let me kill my best friend here.
Right.
But then at the same time, it does just sound suspicious that like some of the experts were like, oh, he definitely like wasn't dehydrated. He was completely fine. Because it is weird that for those days, he's released from the hospital after an hour.
Yeah. I mean, he's young.
Still, but like dehydration, like you're close to death if you haven't had it for 3 days.
Yeah, no, for sure. But I also think too, like if it's just dehydration, put an IV in there and those types of fluids can.
In an hour?
I mean, if other doctors are saying it's possible.
Yeah.
Because I think everyone is different, so I think it's hard to say that I feel like that's not a definitive enough reason.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not solid enough for me to be like, okay, yeah, he definitely did it.
And, like, when I thought about it, too, like, oh, yeah, he would be arrested because, like, it's murder.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it makes you think, like, was it, like, kindness murder, like a mercy killing?
Yeah.
Or was it, like, more malicious for some reason? It's just, there's no way to know because, again, we only have his side of the story.
Well, and the thing with that journal, too, I don't know how much is written in there. Like, the story you told, is that majority from him or is that also from the journals too?
No, both of them had written in the journals. I did see some pictures of the writing. I didn't pay attention to because I was typing my notes.
Right.
But there were pictures of the journal entries that are like floating around.
Well, because I'm just like, for me, it would have been the handwriting because some of the things that David said in there about like wanting to die and things like that.
Oh, right. If you think that's his handwriting or not.
Right. I feel like that's kind of compelling in Raffi's favor in the sense of like, no, I see he wrote it himself that he wanted this to happen. I'm not making this up. But if the handwriting, is similar or whatever,
yeah,
that would make me suspicious because then it seems like he's filling in information.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point.
So it's that journal, man.
And it's just like, I think the part that's really sad too is if they were just like truly lost and it, is just bad circumstances, they were so close to their car. And they were so close to the path.
And so that like the moment you talked about how close they were, I thought Raffi was going to be dead.
Mm-hmm.
But then when he was still alive, I immediately became suspicious.
Right. Same.
And I was like, oh, this is weird. But then as the trial went on, I was like, well,
yeah,
I don't know.
And I mean, it could be true, like, too, in all honesty, if he is super dehydrated, then there is the delirium and everything that sets in. So maybe you can't figure out the trails right there.
And if his friend is sick from whatever they were eating.
Right.
And he was eating it too, so he might not have had the same effects, but who knows what kind of effect it had on him psychologically.
Right.
I don't know.
I know.
You could make an argument for both.
Either way, like depending on how you tell the story.
Yeah.
Because Mr. Ballin made it sound really like this was a shitty situation that these two friends got in.
Yeah.
Then another article I read was like, oh, he did it. Like, here's all this stuff. Like,
it's all about perspective.
Yeah.
For sure.
So it's really hard to figure out what happened.
Which I feel like is why character is going to play a huge factor.
Role. Yeah.
Because like I immediately started thinking, like when you started reading the family quote, I started thinking to myself, okay, if Laura and I were in this situation.
Right. I kept
both
thinking
of our
about
families,
that too, and it made me so sad.
both of our families know the other well enough to be able to speak to the kind of person they are and whether or not they would know that they did it on purpose and whatnot.
Right.
And so if his family is thinking there's no way he would have done this maliciously.
Right. That puts a whole new perspective into it as well.
Yeah. For me, that carries a lot of weight that he didn't do it for malicious intent.
And like, here's another part that I like didn't add in, but I'll just do it now. After he killed David, Mattson showed up, the park ranger, 6 hours later. Okay,
so that was the other thing that irritated me too, because this park ranger's like, oh, this thing is empty. Oh, wait, these guys have been here for days.
He said it was common. He said it was very common for people to come get one-day parking passes and then just not show up for a couple days and then come back a few days later and be like, we're so sorry. Like, can we extend it? Like, things like that. So that's why it wasn't a red flag when they didn't come back immediately, which is why he was more annoyed that he now had to go find them, because it's just like a typical thing that happens.
And it was also just like their walking pattern seemed weird too. Like how far in my head, based on what was described, that they went. It sounded like they went past the parking lot at one point.
Right.
And then walked back in the direction they came from to go to the other side.
Yeah.
And then walked back.
Yeah. Because they weren't in the same camping spot the second time as they were the first time.
Right.
But they were still, because the first time they walked like a mile and a half into it.
Yeah.
The second time they were about half a mile.
Yeah.
But it's just like, where did they walk?
Right. That's the part that's confusing, is that it sounds like they passed the parking lot, decided to backtrack, but they went further.
Yeah.
And way out yonder.
And it's also...
And then came back?
Interesting is when they went to the rim to go like see if that was the road, they were able to make it back to their tent that time.
Right. That was the other thing that I thought about. I was like, if they're continuing on into this desert, how far did they go before they were like, well, let's turn around and still have enough energy to make it back?
And to know how to get back.
Right.
Like if you get turned around by going a mile and a half to your car, like from your car.
And you're now just an open desert.
Right. And you're able to make it back to your campsite. It's all just like, I don't know. There are parts that make me think like, it's just weird.
And I wonder,
I don't know
if it's like, it would be very, in my head, I could see it also being, it was what he said it was. But given that he might have been delusional or delirious or whatever, like he might not remember all the facts.
Right.
He might not remember things exactly how it went. And so in a panic, because he has these holes himself, he's filling in this information, you know, to make it sound more plausible. You know, it's like trying to convince people you're telling the truth.
Yeah.
But then you have to lie in the process. So then your credibility is...
Yeah. So, yeah, that was Rattlesnake Canyon.
That'd be like a good, like, debate.
Yeah.
To do, to see if convince it's guilty or not.
Yeah. Good, like, law school practice.
Yeah.
Did you know, I learned this recently, lawyers and attorneys are not the same thing.
I did not know that.
I always thought the term was interchangeable. One is allowed to practice law, and one is like not allowed to practice on their own. I can't remember the exact difference between the two, but yeah, they're not the same.
Is it like someone testifying versus not?
I don't know.
Like in a court?
I'm not sure. I think one also was like one passed the bar test and is legally allowed to like do it, and one didn't pass the bar test. Not that they didn't pass it, just that like they didn't take it. You know what? Some people want
I feel like it's got to be attorney then, because attorney, private client privilege, and defense attorney, prosecuting attorney.
Okay. The primary difference between an attorney and a lawyer is that an attorney is licensed to practice law.
That's right. And
represents clients in court, while a lawyer has completed law school but it may not be licensed to practice law.
So it might be
all attorneys are lawyers, but not all lawyers are attorneys. So
I wonder if like a lawyer is like an estate lawyer or like that kind of thing.
Could be. But yeah, isn't that fascinating?
That's interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's my case.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Very well done.
Thank you.
Yes, very sad.
Yeah, I should have done that up at the beginning.
And throw it in right when we all realize it's a sad story.
I know that wasn't the best part for it, but
it's okay. You tried. It's like telling someone something's hot after they already touched the stove.
Yeah, exactly. Or after they drink something. Doesn't that taste weird?
Yes, all of those.
Exactly.
Oh, still good though. Still good.
Thank you. Tell me a story, Mackenzie.
I'd love to, Lauren. So in 1993, on an Indian reservation in southwestern United States, a mysterious and deadly disease began to claim the lives of young Navajo Indians at an alarming rate. More than 20 people succumbed to this illness, leaving health officials baffled by its origins and symptoms, which they had never encountered before. New Mexico is bordered by Colorado in the north, Oklahoma and Texas in the east, Mexico in the south, and Arizona in the west. Its northwest corner touches Arizona, Utah, and Colorado, creating the only spot where the 4 states meet, known as the Four Corners.
I want to go there.
Yes, same.
Part of our road trip.
Yeah. Where we don't kill each other.
Yeah. Well, because we won't be sleeping in any national parks. So
correct.
We'll have cute little Airbnbs and hotels.
We're anxious enough that if some park ranger says, you need to have a gallon of water, and if we don't have exactly a gallon of water, we ain't doing shit.
We brought so much water for Blue Ridge. We had like 4 gallons.
We had more than that.
We had way more than 4 gallons. That sounded really small. We had like 7 or 8 gallons.
Easily.
And we were not in 90-degree weather.
No, but it was fucking hot.
It was hot.
We had humidity. They might not have had the humidity, but we had the humidity.
Yeah. And we also were going into a place where there was more water. Okay.
That is true.
Sorry, go on.
It rained on us, said waters.
I still can't listen to some songs without being so bummed that I didn't hear it live.
I got over that so fast.
I did not. I did not. I still will hear a song and I'm like, man, that would have been good.
The Navajo... No. 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 The Navajo people, also known as the Dine. There's a little doohickey on top of the E, so I don't know what that means you're supposed to do. Anyway, they have a rich and vibrant cultural heritage that stretches back thousands of years. So we're going to do a brief history.
Like Kenzie doing history?
Like you did with the snakes. I'm going to do with Navajo. The Navajo people believe they emerged from Earth's surface in ancient times, passing through various worlds before settling in their current homeland in the Four Corners region of the southwestern United States. Navajo culture is deeply rooted in oral tradition with stories, myths, and ceremonies passed down through generations. Central to their belief is the concept of hozo, or harmony and balance, which guides their actions and interactions with the natural world.
I like that.
The Navajo practiced a complex spiritual Okay, can't even say that word. Spiritual tradition centered around reverence for nature and the supernatural. They believe in a pantheon of deities and spirits, with ceremonies such as Blessing Way and Night Chant playing crucial roles in maintaining balance and well-being. Despite centuries of adversity, the Navajo have maintained their cultural identity and traditions. Today, they continue to preserve and celebrate their heritage through ceremonies, language revitalization efforts, and activism to protect their lands and sovereignty. But I can't say fucking tradition, but I can say revitalization.
And sovereignty.
Could I spell sovereignty? No.
I know there's a V, a U, a G.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I could tell you that it's spelled funky.
Yeah. Yep, it is.
Yeah. So the story unfolds with the tale of Merrill Bahi, a 19-year-old Navajo runner who had won a scholarship to the Santa Fe Indian School, which was in, obviously, Santa Fe. But it was more with, I think it was like a mixture of different types of Native American tribes that were in this area.
Mm-hmm.
Not like specifically Navajo or whatever.
Okay.
There was a bit of a culture shock for Merrill. It was in the city, so.
Mm-hmm.
And his friends had to show him how to make a bed.
Oh.
But he slowly adjusted and did well in school. Merrill's life intertwined with that of Florina Woody, leading to a deep and enduring love.
Oh.
They were so in love that the track coach made Florina the manager to hand out towels and stuff so she was there so Merrill could focus on running.
No. I mean, clever.
Right. That's work with them, not against them.
Exactly.
However, tragedy struck when Florina fell ill shortly after giving birth to their son, Maurice.
Oh, they even got married?
They were going to.
Oh.
They hadn't yet. They did have the baby. Yeah. Dr. Patricia McFeely, a medical investigator, told Forensic Files, quote, her lungs were white out, meaning they were just solid white and they should usually be dark from air. So they obviously had something in there, most likely fluid.
Oh my gosh.
The hospital tried to give her oxygen to help her breathe, but none of the standards procedures worked and Florina's heart gave out. The pressure on her lungs was too much for her body to bear. She passed away on Mother's Day at the age of 21.
Jeez.
Baby. The cause of death was acute respiratory failure. Florina's mom, Bidda Begay, told Forensic Files, quote, they allowed us to go to her room. I just couldn't believe that my baby was gone.
Aww.
I didn't want to leave her. I just wanted to hang on to her right there.
This story will also be sad, apparently.
Oh, yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Sorry, New Mexico.
Yeah. Well, you know.
Well, every story typically is sad.
If they're scary, certainly they don't have much of a happy ending.
No. No, they don't.
Meryl, devastated by Florina's death, also fell ill with similar symptoms and was rushed to the hospital. It was the same hospital that had treated Florina. After the initial consultation, Meryl decided that he didn't want to be treated at the same hospital where Florina had died. They didn't mention why, but I don't think it was necessarily the medical care.
Right.
I think it was more belief than...
Yeah.
So his family quickly rushed him to the Indian Medical Center in Gallup, which was over an hour away.
Wow.
Shortly before arriving, Meryl lost consciousness, and shortly after being admitted to the ER, Meryl Bahi died from acute respiratory failure at only 19 years old.
Oh my gosh.
Meryl died during Florina's funeral service that was across the street.
Oh, Mackenzie.
His family found out why they were at Flo's funeral.
Ugh.
Yeah. The deaths of Florina and Meryl sparked fear and concern among the Navajo community and health officials alike, prompting urgent investigation into the mysterious disease.
And they were the two who were married. Well,
yeah, they were together.
What happened to their kid?
I believe with grandma.
Oh.
I don't know if it's her mom or his, but
yeah.
Her mom was the one that was interviewed on Forensic Files.
Okay.
According to the American Lung Association, an outbreak is a sudden rise in the number of cases of a disease more than normal expectancy in a community or geographical area. An outbreak can be declared an epidemic when the disease spreads rapidly to many people. So in December of 2019, the news was full of reports of an epidemic in Wuhan, China. Similar to an outbreak, an epidemic is defined by being contained in a small population, but the number of cases is larger than normally expected. Other examples of epidemics in our modern world include yellow fever, smallpox, and West Nile. They can also describe things that aren't contagious. Like teen vaping or obesity.
Okay.
So they kind of encompass a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Many epidemics can be contained and do not spread worldwide. However, in the case like, for example, COVID-19, a virus which became quickly widespread and with cases present worldwide.
We are recording on like one of the anniversaries of it shutting down. Yep.
The number of people affected was exponentially growing, and the World Health Organization upgraded COVID-19 to a pandemic in March of 2020. So other examples of pandemics are the 1918 Spanish flu, which the CDC estimates that the H1N1 flu virus affected 500 million people, or 1/3 of the world's population at the time. The bubonic plague, returning in 1346 to 1353, was known at the time as the Black Death. In those years, 1/3 or more of the people in Europe may have died of plague, and the population took an estimated 200 years to rebound to pre-plague levels.
Wow.
Yeah. So as the death toll rose and more young Navajo fell ill, the situation became increasingly dire. With no clear understanding of the disease, health officials struggled to contain the outbreak and provide guidance to the public. Health officials wanted to perform autopsies on Meryl and Florina, but it was against Navajo religious beliefs. Navajo believed that any violation of a dead body will result in serious damage to the spirit of the deceased, as well as emotional and physiological damage to the family of the deceased.
Wow.
Steve Darden, former director of Native Americans for Community Action, said, quote, "Many Navajos believe that a person's immortal soul remains attached to the physical body 4 days after death. Traditional belief holds that autopsies cause the deceased person additional suffering in the world while he or she is awaiting transition to another level of existence."
So would they be able to wait 4 days?
No, because they need to be buried.
Oh.
He added that many Navajos believe that if a person is not returned to Mother Earth through burial within 4 days, the soul will roam the earth and cause disturbance to other people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
You're always one step ahead of me. Flo's mother, however, wanted answers.
Yeah.
And so she decided to go against tradition and the tribal elders and actually gave permission for the autopsy.
Wow.
It sounds like an autopsy was performed on both of them, but they didn't address his family. So autopsies were conducted, but they provided few answers, leaving doctors and investigators perplexed.
That sucks.
Within a week of Florina and Meryl's death, 6 more young Navajo people died and more were being admitted to the hospital each day.
Oh my God.
New Mexico's health officials feared that they had an epidemic on their hands.
And it was only hitting Navajo, like, populations?
We'll get to that.
Okay.
See, one step ahead. Dr. Ann Reitz, an attending physician, said, quote, "It was frightening for people who came down with a fever and a cough and a headache at the time.
Wow.
As a physician, we were sending people home who we had to accept the possibility that they could drop dead within hours of leaving the hospital."
See, when COVID first hit, that's what I thought it was like. I thought, like, you get sick and you're dead. Like, you're not going to survive this. And I mean, a lot of people didn't.
Yeah.
But it wasn't,
This was pretty much like
you get it, you're kind of done.
Yeah. There's a 50% mortality rate.
Oh my God. What was COVID's?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
COVID had higher numbers too, so I'm not
Yeah.
sure. Like, this didn't have the abundance that COVID did,
Yeah.
but given that half the people that got it died, then it has a
God.
50% mortality rate.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah. So the media dubbed the illness the Navajo flu, drawing attention to the crisis on a national scale. The name was inaccurate. The disease was not limited to Navajo individuals and resulted in widespread panic and shunning of reservation inhabitants by outsiders. Pretends to be shocked.
This is literally a mirror.
Of
Almost
COVID?
a mirror of COVID.
Yeah, on a smaller scale for sure.
Yeah.
Mhm. And
Like the
AIDS.
shunning, the...
Th-
Yeah.
I mean, this is exactly how the media has handled pretty much most
Yeah.
epidemics in here.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
restaurants adjacent to the reservation began banning Navajo regulars.
Oh my gosh.
And school field trips were canceled after their destinations refused to serve Navajo children.
Jeez.
Speculation arose with diseases like the bubonic plague were considered but ultimately ruled out. The true cause remained elusive, leaving medical professionals and the public in a state of uncertainty and fear. The pneumonic plague, which is highly contagious, attacks the lungs, and kills quickly, was also considered a possibility. The plague was similar to the Four Corners virus, which was later dubbed sin nombre, which means without name,
Oh.
which is ironic because now it has a name.
Yeah.
The pneumonic plague can be treated with a large amount of antibiotics, so doctors were hopeful that this would be the diagnosis.
Yeah.
The autopsy showed otherwise. So the capillaries, which transport blood, nutrients, and oxygens to cells in your organs and body system, but the capillaries are teeny tiny
Yeah.
little blood vessels in your vascular system. Teeny tiny. Itty bitty living space. But because the capillaries of the victims had collapsed, leaving the lungs wet like large sponges, which is not consistent with the pneumonic plague.
Oh.
So amidst the uncertainty...
What?
Amidst?
Amidst. It's AMIDST, right?
Amidst?
Amidst. It's such a common word that you read all the time, but then when you have to say it. Wait, sorry, go ahead.
Amidst, you're right.
Yeah, amidst. Yeah.
Amidst. Okay, that just doesn't sound right. I'll try again, I guess. Amidst.
Amidst. Oh, no, yeah, that was perfect. That was perfect.
Amidst the uncertainty, the CDC was called in to assist the investigation. Is that good?
Yeah,
Okay.
that sounds great.
So specialists embarked on a thorough examination of the affected area, donning protective gear reminiscent of astronauts to shield themselves from the unknown dangers lurking within.
Like PPE.
Flo's mom told Forensic Files about the experience, saying, quote, they wore something like, the astronauts that they're sending off into outer space.
Jeez.
And how they were dressed like that when they came to our place. And that was even scarier. There was fear. And she lets out this big exhale and says, they scared us.
Oh,
Like,
it's like the hazmat suits.
Exasperated. Right. And I was like, well, of course that's terrifying. They're coming to your home dressed in this gear.
And you're not.
And you're not.
That's what happened at work when we all got kicked out, March 20th or whatever it was. We were literally just working, and then this huge crew of people in hazmat suits come in, and they're like, all right, you guys have to go. And I'm like, this is terrifying.
Right.
You're in a hazmat suit, and I'm not, and now
Right.
we're in the same area together.
Yes. And like
I've been breathing in this air.
in their home.
Yes, in your
And
home is even more.
You could tell it was more of like an exacerbation of exacerbation?
Exacerbation. That doesn't sound right.
It was more of like a see, now I don't know another alternative word because that word describes what she was like exhausted but not exhausted,
Yeah.
tired of,
Yeah, there we go.
And
Exacerbated.
Hey. And frustrated that sensitivity wasn't taken into consideration.
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
is fair. So the Navajo turned to their healers and medicine men who are responsible for the health on the reservation. Navajo medicine men and healers play a vital role in Navajo culture, serving as spiritual leaders, healers, and mediators between the physical and spiritual worlds, not meditators. The traditions of Navajo medicine men encompass a rich tapestry of rituals, ceremonies, and practices passed down through the generations. Navajo medicine men and healers believe in the interconnectedness of all beings and the importance of maintaining balance and harmony with the spiritual world, nature, and community. The Navajo medicine men and healers are respected teachers within their communities, passing on their knowledge and traditions to the next generation through oral teachings, apprenticeships, and ceremonies. Overall, Navajo healing traditions are deeply rooted in spirituality, interconnectedness, and reverence for the natural world. They emphasize holistic well-being, addressing not only physical ailments, but also emotional, mental, and spiritual imbalances. These traditions play a crucial role in maintaining the health and vitality of Navajo communities. So the Navajo healers and medicine men actually recalled similar outbreaks in the past that they had linked to environmental factors like heavy rainfall, which then was followed by an increased rodent population.
Oh.
Outbreaks had occurred in 1993 and 1918, preceding 2 years of plentiful rains, heavy winter snows in the mountain. The tribal elders said that the heavy rains resulted in a dramatic increase in the number of mice on the reservation, and they suspected that there was a connection between the large number of mice and the deaths.
Oh.
But they just weren't sure what it was.
Right.
Records did indicate that there had been heavy rains in 1991 and 1992, and the outbreak started in 1993. This revelation led investigators to consider the possibility of a viral infection transmitted by rodents. There was also an old Navajo saying, quote, "If a mouse ever runs over your clothing, you should burn it."
Oh.
Apparently mice are no bueno. Within 6 weeks of Florina Woody's and Merrill Bahi's death, more than 12 other young people had died from the same mysterious illness. There was a break in the case when a man visiting the reservation from Iceland developed symptoms. This led medical investigators to the conclusion that the outbreak was most likely environmental and not confined to the Navajo people. Even once the correct agent had been found, the stigma surrounding the disease persisted. Meanwhile, at the CDC, labs in the maximum containment section, which is used for the study of the world's most dangerous germs and viruses.
That would not be good for either of us.
Scary.
I could not.
Oh, my mind immediately went to that's where a next terrorist attack would be, is the CDC, and let all that shit into the air.
Yeah.
Not to give anybody ideas, but
I'm sure they've already had those ideas.
I feel like it's a movie somewhere.
I think it is. It has to be.
Yeah. Specialists were performing an ELISA test or enzymes-linked immunosorbent assays. It's not assay, it's ASSA. Assay. Anyway, ELISA test.
Okay.
On the tissue samples from the victims. When people get sick, their body reacts by producing antibodies that fight the disease. Each disease produces a unique type of antibody. So the ELISA test can isolate those antibodies and compare them to thousands of samples that the CDC has on file.
That's cool, though.
Yes, but
Yeah.
Scary.
It's very scary.
In a breakthrough moment, specialists identified a match between the antibodies found in tissue samples from the victims and a rare strain of hantavirus previously encountered during the Korean War.
Wow.
So during the Korean War, more than 3,000 troops developed high fever and kidney failure with about 400 fatalities.
Wow.
Doctors named this illness...
What's the Elvis?
Doctors named this illness hantavirus, attributing it to the Hantan River in Korea. Which, I'm not going to lie, when I first heard it, I was like, please, dear Lord, do not let it be something racial.
I know.
It's a location.
That's what I thought for a second as
location.
well.
It's a location.
Okay.
So it's okay. Which was populated by a significant number of striped field mice carrying the virus.
Oh.
So the virus was transmitted through the urine and feces of the mice. Once dried, the virus becomes airborne and is inhaled by soldiers, subsequently attacking their kidneys.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, they're not eating mouse poop.
No, yeah, but the fact that once it dries, it becomes airborne, terrifying.
Absolutely. CDC officials were puzzled about how the virus could have traveled all the way from Korea. Remember, this is pre-COVID, so they didn't realize that could happen.
Right.
Because all those soldiers had to come back.
Yep.
How it could travel all the way from Korea until they recalled what they had been told by the Navajo traditional healers. According to them, a remarkably wet winter followed by the masting of pinyon trees led to an abundant supply of nuts, causing the rodent population in the state to increase. So, at least in the show, pinyon trees looked like what a desert pine tree. If I'm thinking of a way to describe it, pine trees have the little needles.
Oh, yeah.
And it didn't seem like it was Christmas tree kind of thing, but it looked like it had similar needles and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
I'll put a picture in.
Okay.
Because I could be dead wrong. But anyway, a lot of nuts, a lot of food.
Right.
So the rodent population obviously would increase in the state.
Yeah.
This increase in rodents coincided with the deaths of the young Navajo. Investigators then captured and tested field mice from the area and discovered that these mice were shedding a virus with the same DNA profile as the viruses found in Florina Woody and Merrill Bahi.
Wow.
The discovery shed light on the origins of the outbreak, tracing it back to the abundance of deer mice in the area. The virus transmitted through rodent droppings and likely infected Florina and Merrill during routine activities like cleaning or gardening.
Right.
The only reason the Navajo made up a large percentage of the victims was because they lived in more rural areas with a larger deer mice population.
Mm-hmm.
So it was purely circumstantial.
Right.
In conclusion, armed with this knowledge, health officials urged precautions such as wearing masks and gloves when handling rodent droppings and taking measures to deter rodents from homes. I am using this the next time there is a mouse in my apartment.
Be like, I have a report that I can tell you about why you need to get this out.
I'm going to get this virus, and guess who the fuck I'm going to sue? The collaboration between modern science and traditional wisdom proved instrumental in identifying and addressing the crisis, highlighting the importance of listening to diverse perspectives and combating infectious diseases. And that is the Four Corners virus, the Sin Nombre virus, or now, because it's a different strain than the one in Korea, they do call it something else. There's additional words with it, but the Honda virus.
Wow.
Yeah.
There are too many similarities to what we're experiencing now.
Oh my God, it was parallel, but just smaller scale.
Yeah.
Like truly everything about it. And yet we have a global pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And God forbid we learn from the past. Like we've had so many epidemics that have been handled and things like that. And ideally, he sounds like he's getting into something.
The cardboard's right there. He's pulling it apart. And I just stunned. I go, excuse me. He goes,
Yeah, anyway, you'd think we'd be able to learn from our past.
I mean, you would think.
Given that we have plenty of examples that we can learn from. But yeah.
Wow.
And also calling it something racist. Like, really, just...
Right. Like, oh my God. And the discrimination against the people who they're like, who the racism is against.
Right. And it's like, to put those labels on it, it spreads misinformation and causes more harm than good.
Yep.
And so it's like, just be wise of your words.
It's just the parallels I just can't get over.
Yeah. No.
And that's so sad and so scary.
Mm-hmm. I thought the side of it with like, it was interesting. It was on Forensic Files, but they used like more, native and older traditions.
Yeah.
To really figure out what it was.
Which was cool too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I thought it'd be an interesting story to share.
It is an interesting story to share, and it is very scary.
Yes. So if you got mouse poop in your apartment, play them this podcast and tell them that it could contain. Because when I had the mouse, there were droplings.
Droplings?
Yeah. And they would have
Droppings.
been, that too. They would have been dried up.
And given off the disease.
The fact that I didn't die.
Shocking, honestly.
Shocking, given that there were 4 in my apartment. I love the warmer weather. I'm so nervous.
Yeah.
I'm so freaking nervous. Like, this is when it happens.
Little Macy's found her way in. Well, thanks for listening to our scary New Mexico episode.
Yes.
Actually pretty creepy.
It's like an ominous kind of creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very ominous.
Not like spooky, but like,
ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rate and review us everywhere.
And to our international listeners, if you're new, welcome. I would say it in another language, but I don't know them.
Yep.
Still feel free to like email us because we'll find a way to email you stickers.
Absolutely.
It can't be hard to mail overseas an envelope.
No.
So email us at ascarystatepodcast@gmail.com with a picture of your review and or rating. And even if you're across the pond in either direction.
Yeah. Either pond.
Either pond. North, south, well, yeah, north, because that's Canada, but that's not across the pond. Anyway, let us know and
the Arctic Circle.
We'll figure out a way to get it to you.
So I guess thanks for listening and stay scary.
Stay safe.
Stay safe.
Mm-hmm.